The purple grass swayed gently across the endless fields of Verdania. Elder Moss walked slowly between the neat rows of grain, his four arms moving in perfect rhythm as he checked each plant. His people had farmed these same fields for 3,000 years. The same crops, the same methods, the same peaceful harvest every season. Life was good on Verdania. The soil gave them what they needed. No more, no less. The Verdanian way was balance. Take only what you require, work only what you must, rest when the day ends. Their ancestors had learned this wisdom long ago, and nothing had changed since then. Today felt different, though. Elder Moss could see the silver dot in the sky growing larger each hour. A ship was coming, a big one. The Galactic Council had sent word 3 days ago about new settlers seeking land. Humans, they called themselves. A species from a small blue planet far away. Moss reached the edge of his family's plot and stopped. His plot was exactly 100 steps long and 100 steps wide. His father had farmed this exact same area. His grandfather, too. His great-grandfather had first planted here when the family received their land allocation. The boundaries had never changed. Why would they need to change? The other Verdanian farmers were gathering near the landing field now. Moss could see their green skin glinting in the afternoon sun. Everyone looked curious but calm. New settlers came sometimes. Usually they asked for a small plot, built a simple home, and learned the Verdanian way of farming. They always adapted quickly to the peaceful rhythm of life here. The human ship landed with a loud roar that made the ground shake. Moss had never heard anything so noisy during farming hours. The ship was huge, bigger than any settler transport he had ever seen. It looked like it could carry thousands of beings. When the doors opened, creatures poured out that made Moss step backward. These humans were strange. They had only 2 arms like the Kalari, but they moved with quick, sharp motions. Their skin came in many different colors. Some had hair on their faces, others had none at all. Their eyes darted everywhere, looking at the soil, the plants, the horizon, the sky. One human approached the group of Verdanian farmers. This one was tall with brown skin and short black hair. The translator device around its neck activated. Greetings. I am Sam Rivers, agricultural coordinator for the human colony fleet. We seek permission to establish farming operations on your world. Elder Moss stepped forward. As the eldest farmer in this region, he spoke for his people. Volcom Sam Rivers. I'm Elder Moss. We can provide you with suitable farmland. There is an unused section in the rocky hills beyond the valley. The soil there is difficult, but with proper care, it should grow enough food for your people. Sam Rivers looked toward the hills, then back at the rich valley where the Verdanian farms spread out in neat squares. His eyes moved constantly, studying everything. How large is this rocky section? Large enough for your needs. Perhaps 50 of your human steps in each direction. Sam Rivers was quiet for a moment. That's about 1 acre. How many humans do you think that will feed? Elder Moss thought carefully. If you farm as we do, it should provide food for your family. Perhaps 12 to 15 individuals. I see. Sam Rivers looked back toward his ship. We have about 8,000 humans aboard our vessels. The number made Elder Moss feel dizzy. 8,000 beings? He had never heard of so many settlers arriving at once. His entire farming community only had 300 Verdanians. That is quite a large group. Perhaps you could establish multiple settlements across different worlds. Perhaps. But we prefer to stay together when possible. Community farming is important to our people. Sam Rivers post. Would it be possible to see this rocky land you mentioned? Elder Moss led the human and several other Verdanian farmers toward the hills. The walk took nearly an hour. The rocky section was exactly as he remembered it. Hard gray stones jutted up from thin soil. Scraggly weeds grew in scattered patches. Water trickled down from the higher ground, but never stayed long enough to soak into the earth. This land has been empty for generations, Moss explained. Too difficult to farm properly. Sam Rivers knelt down and grabbed a handful of the rocky soil. He rubbed it between his fingers, smelled it, even tasted a small bit. The other humans with him spread out across the area, examining different spots. They pulled out strange devices and pointed them at the ground. The mineral content looks good, one human called out. Iron levels are excellent. Good drainage potential. Water source is consistent, another added. We could work with this. Elder Moss felt confused. These humans seemed excited about the worst farmland on Verdania. Perhaps they did not understand proper agriculture yet. The soil is very poor here, he explained gently. You would struggle to grow enough food. Sam Rivers stood up, brushing dirt from his hands. We appreciate your honesty, Elder Moss. This land will work perfectly for our needs. You accept this allocation? Yes. We'll begin preparation immediately. As they walked back toward the valley, Elder Moss felt relieved. The humans seemed pleasant enough, and they had accepted the difficult land without complaint. They would probably learn the Verdanian way of farming quickly. In a few seasons, they would understand why the rocky hills remained empty. Behind them, Sam Rivers was already talking to his people about soil improvement, drainage systems, and something called crop rotation. Elder Moss did not understand most of their words, but he was glad the newcomers sounded optimistic about their farming future. The sun was setting by the time they reached the settlement. Tomorrow, the humans would begin their new life as farmers on Verdania. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived, and Elder Moss could not sleep. Strange sounds came from the rocky hills every night. Banging, scraping, and the rumble of heavy machinery. During the day, clouds of dust rose from the human settlement like smoke from fire. Moss decided to investigate. He walked toward the hills in the early morning, expecting to find the humans preparing their small farming plot. Instead, he discovered something that made no sense. The rocky hillside had been completely transformed. Where once there had been scattered stones and thin soil, now there were neat terraces carved into the slope. Water flowed through channels cut into the rock, feeding green plants that were already sprouting in perfectly straight rows. But that was not the strangest part. The humans had cleared an area far beyond their allocated land. The 50-step boundary had expanded to several hundred steps in every direction. They were still working, removing rocks and improving soil across an ever-growing area. Sam Rivers stood near a large machine that was breaking up stones and mixing them with dark soil. His clothes were covered in dirt, and sweat dripped from his face despite the cool morning air. "Good morning, Elder Moss," Sam called out when he noticed the Verdanian approaching. "Perfect timing. I want to show you what we've accomplished." Elder Moss looked around in confusion. "You have worked beyond your allocated boundaries." "Yes, we needed more space. This rocky soil has incredible potential once it's properly developed, but the land allocation was sufficient for your needs." Sam Rivers wiped his hands on a cloth and walked over to where several other humans were planting seeds. "Elder Moss, I think there might be a misunderstanding about our farming methods." An older human woman looked up from her work. "Sam's right. We don't farm just for today or tomorrow. We farm for next year, and the year after that, and the year after that." Elder Moss felt more confused. "But why do you need so much food?" "It's not just about need," Sam explained. "It's about preparation. On Earth, our home planet, we learned that you can never have too much food security. Famines, natural disasters, bad weather, anything can happen. The only way to survive is to always produce more than you think you'll require." Another human joined the conversation. This one was younger with red hair and strong arms. "Plus, we're not just farming for ourselves. We're farming for trade, for emergencies, for growth. What if more human ships arrive? What if our Verdanian neighbors need help during a bad harvest?" Elder Moss had never heard such thinking before. But if everyone farms only what they need, there's always enough. What if there isn't enough one year? Sam asked, "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing goes wrong. The seasons are predictable. The soil is reliable. We have farmed the same way for thousands of years." Sam Rivers looked toward the Verdanian farms in the valley. "Those are beautiful farms, Elder Moss. Your people have achieved something wonderful, stability and peace. But we come from a world where stability was never guaranteed." The red-haired human continued planting as he talked. "Earth was harsh. Droughts, floods, ice ages, volcanoes. Our ancestors learned that the only way to survive was to always be ready for the worst. So you work constantly. We work efficiently," the older woman corrected. "Every day we don't improve our situation is a day we fall behind." Elder Moss watched the humans continue their labor. Even while talking, they never stopped moving. Their hands planted seeds. Their eyes scanned for problems. Their minds seemed to be planning the next improvement. "But when do you rest?" Sam Rivers smiled. "We rest when the work is done." "When will the work be done?" "When we have enough food to feed everyone who might need it." Elder Moss realized he was beginning to understand something troubling about these humans. How many beings is everyone? Good question. Sam Rivers pulled out a small device and showed Elder Moss some numbers. "Right now, we're planning to feed our 8,000 colonists, plus surplus for emergencies, plus trade goods for our Verdanian neighbors, plus reserves in case more human ships arrive, plus backup supplies in case of bad weather or crop failure." The numbers made Elder Moss feel dizzy again. "How much food is that?" "About 20 times what a normal settlement would produce." 20 times? That would require... Elder Moss tried to calculate in his head. "That would require most of the hill region." "Actually, we're planning to expand into the next valley over," the red-haired human said casually. "The soil composition looks promising." Elder Moss stared at them. "The next valley is already allocated to Verdanian families." "Oh, we're not taking it from anyone," Sam Rivers said quickly. "We want to partner with your families. Share our techniques, improve everyone's yields, create abundance for the whole region." "Improve our yields? But we produce exactly what we need. What if you could produce enough to help others too?" The older woman stood up and brushed soil from her knees. "Sam, show him the test plots." Sam Rivers led Elder Moss to a section where they had been experimenting with Verdanian grain crops. The plants were taller and thicker than any Moss had ever seen. The grain heads were heavy with seeds. "Using human soil improvement techniques, we've increased the yield of your traditional crops by about 400%. Elder Moss touched one of the grain stalks. It was real. "This is the same crop we grow in the valley. Same seeds, different methods. Better soil preparation, optimal nutrition, efficient water management, careful spacing. But we do not need 4 times as much grain." Sam Rivers looked at him with genuine confusion. "Elder Moss, what if someone else needed grain? What if there was a disaster somewhere? What if a ship full of hungry refugees landed tomorrow?" "That has never happened, but it could happen." Elder Moss walked slowly back toward his village, his mind spinning with strange new ideas. Behind him, the humans continued working, their voices planning and organizing and improving with endless energy that never seemed to fade. 6 months later, Elder Moss found himself standing in a place he barely recognized. The rocky hills had become a green paradise of growing crops. Terraced fields stretched as far as he could see, filled with plants from a dozen different worlds. Water flowed efficiently through channels that the humans had carved with mathematical precision. But today, Sam Rivers looked troubled. The human sat on a stone wall, staring at a communication device in his hands. His usual energy seemed drained away. "Bad news from the outer colonies," Sam said when he noticed Moss approaching. Something is attacking the agricultural worlds. Elder Moss felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. Attacking? We don't have many details yet. The reports are strange. Worlds that have been farming successfully for centuries are suddenly going silent. Sam Rivers stood up and began pacing, his restless energy returning. The Galactic Council thinks it might be some kind of natural disaster. Crop disease maybe, or unusual weather patterns. Natural disasters do not happen on agricultural worlds, Elder Moss said confidently. The Council chooses only the most stable planets for farming. That's what everyone thought. Sam Rivers showed Elder Moss the communication device. But look at these reports. Calarian Prime stopped transmitting food shipments 3 weeks ago. The Zalthari Agricultural Collective has gone completely dark. Even the garden worlds of the Inner Rim are reporting problems. Elder Moss read the messages with growing confusion. These were old, established farming worlds. Some had been producing food for the galaxy for thousands of years. How could they just stop working? What do the Council experts say? They're sending investigation teams. But here's what worries me. Sam Rivers pulled up a star map on his device. Look at the pattern. Whatever this is, it's moving through the galaxy systematically. It's not random crop failure or weather problems. Elder Moss studied the map. Red marks indicated worlds that had stopped producing food. The red marks formed a rough line moving through space toward their region of the galaxy. How long before it reaches us? If the pattern continues, maybe 6 months, maybe less. That evening, Sam Rivers called a meeting of all the human farmers and any Verdanians who wanted to attend. Elder Moss came, along with several other community leaders. The humans had built a large gathering hall in their settlement, something Verdanians had never thought to construct. The situation is worse than we first thought, Sam began. We've received more detailed reports from the affected worlds. A young human woman named Beth stood up to speak. The investigation teams found the planets completely barren. Not just dead crops, but dead soil. Whatever hit these worlds didn't just destroy this year's harvest. It destroyed the ability to grow anything for decades. The room fell silent. Elder Moss felt his stomach tighten with fear. Verdanians had never faced such a threat. Their peaceful farming methods had always been sufficient because their world had always been safe. How is that possible? Asked another Verdanian farmer. Sam Rivers activated a holographic display showing images from the dead worlds. The investigators found evidence of some kind of biological agent, probably a swarm species that devours not just crops, but the nutrients in the soil itself. A swarm species? Think of locusts, but worse. Much worse. These creatures seem to strip entire planets bare, then move on to the next world. Beth continued the explanation. The pattern suggests they're following established trade routes between agricultural worlds. They hit the food-producing planets first, probably because those worlds have the highest concentration of what they need. Elder Moss raised one of his forehands. What does the Galactic Council plan to do? The Council is debating various response options, Sam said carefully. But most Council species don't have experience with this kind of threat. Their agricultural worlds have been stable for so long that they've never developed emergency protocols. What about military intervention? The Council's military forces are designed to keep peace between civilized species, not fight off biological swarms. They're not equipped for this. An older Verdanian farmer stood up. Then what do we do? Should we evacuate? Sam Rivers exchanged glances with the other humans before answering. We could evacuate. But running away doesn't solve the problem. If these swarms destroy all the agricultural worlds, there won't be anywhere to run to. So we stay and fight. We stay and prepare, Sam said firmly. Earth taught us that you survive disasters by being ready for them before they arrive. The red-haired human named Dave joined the conversation. We need to transform Verdania into a fortress. Not a military fortress, but an agricultural fortress. Something that can survive this swarm and still feed people. How do we do that? Sam Rivers pulled up another display showing detailed plans. First, we increase production dramatically. Not just enough to feed ourselves, but enough to feed refugees from other worlds. Second, we create underground storage facilities to protect seed stocks and preserve food supplies. Third, we develop rapid growth farming techniques that can restore dead soil quickly. Elder Moss studied the plans. They called for transforming the entire region, not just the human settlement. This would require cooperation from all the Verdanian farming communities. Yes, it would. And it would mean changing farming methods that have worked for thousands of years. Yes, it would. Elder Moss looked around the room at his fellow Verdanians. They appeared frightened and uncertain. These humans were asking them to abandon their peaceful, stable way of life and adopt the restless, constantly improving methods that seemed so foreign. But the red marks on the star map were moving closer. If we do this, Elder Moss said slowly, if we transform our entire world into this agricultural fortress you described, do you believe it will be enough? Sam Rivers met his eyes directly. Elder Moss, I can't promise it will be enough, but I can promise you that doing nothing definitely won't be enough. The meeting continued late into the night as humans and Verdanians began planning for a war they had never imagined fighting. The first refugee ships arrived on a cold morning when the fields were heavy with dew. Elder Moss stood beside Sam Rivers at the landing field, watching vessel after vessel touch down. Each ship carried survivors from agricultural worlds that no longer existed. How many are we expecting? Moss asked. Sam Rivers checked his communication device. The latest count is about 50,000 refugees from 12 different worlds. More ships are coming every day. Elder Moss tried to imagine that many beings living on Verdania. His entire planet had only supported a few 100,000 inhabitants before the humans arrived. Now, they would need to feed everyone with resources they were still developing. The first refugees to emerge looked broken. A group of Calarian farmers walked slowly down the ramp of their ship, their blue skin pale and their movements uncertain. Behind them came Zalthari families carrying small bundles of possessions. Everyone had the same haunted look in their eyes. A Calarian elder approached Sam Rivers. "We're grateful for sanctuary. Our world is gone. Everything we built over 2,000 years, gone in 3 days. Tell us what happened," Sam Rivers said gently. The Calarian elder's voice shook as he spoke. "They came from space like a living cloud. Billions of creatures, each one smaller than my hand. But together they covered our sky. They landed everywhere at once and began eating. Eating the crops. Everything. Crops, grass, trees, even the bacteria in the soil. Within hours, our green fields turned to gray dust. We tried to fight them with farming equipment, but there were too many. They stripped our planet bare and then left for the next world." Elder Moss felt sick hearing the description. "How did you escape?" "We ran, left everything behind, and took whatever ships we could find. Most of us made it out before the soil itself died." Sam Rivers put his hand on the Calarian shoulder. "You're safe now. We've been preparing for this." Over the following days, more refugees arrived with similar stories. The creatures, which they called devourers, moved like a single organism across each world they attacked. They consumed every form of biological matter, leaving planets that looked like lifeless rock. The refugee camps that Sam Rivers and the Verdanians had prepared were quickly overwhelmed. But instead of despair, Elder Moss saw something he had never witnessed before. The humans responded to the crisis by working even harder. "We need to expand production by at least 800%, Sam announced at the daily planning meeting. "And we need to do it in the next 2 months. 800%. Elder Moss felt overwhelmed just thinking about it. "That's impossible." Beth, the young human woman, spread out detailed charts across the table. "It's not impossible, but it means transforming the entire continent into farmland. Every valley, every hillside, every piece of available ground." "What about the refugee housing?" "We build vertically," Dave suggested. "High-density living structures that don't take up farmland. The refugees can live above the farms and help with the work." Elder Moss watched as the humans and many of the refugees began organizing themselves into work teams. The Calarian farmers, despite their trauma, eagerly joined efforts to expand crop production. The Zalthari, who had specialized in fruit cultivation, began establishing orchards in areas that Verdanians had never thought to farm. "Why are they so willing to work?" Moss asked Sam Rivers as they watched a mixed group of humans, Calarians, and Verdanians clearing a new field. "Because they understand what's at stake," Sam replied. "Everyone here has seen what happens when you don't have enough food production to survive a crisis." Within weeks, Verdania was completely transformed. The peaceful, stable farming communities were replaced by a planet-wide agricultural operation that never stopped. Fields were planted and harvested in precise rotations. Underground storage facilities were carved into hillsides. Seed banks were established in multiple locations. The refugees contributed more than just labor. Each species brought agricultural knowledge from their home worlds. The Calarians introduced fast-growing grain varieties. The Zalthari shared techniques for growing food in rocky soil. A group of Altarian farmers taught everyone how to extract maximum nutrition from limited space. Elder Moss found himself working longer hours than ever before in his life. His traditional farming plot had been expanded and integrated into a larger cooperative system. Instead of growing just enough for his family, he was now responsible for producing food that would feed hundreds of beings. But something strange was happening. Despite the fear and uncertainty, Elder Moss felt more alive than he had in years. The constant challenge of meeting production goals, the collaboration with other species, the knowledge that his work was saving lives, it gave him a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. "The Galactic Council has declared Verdania a protected world," Sam Rivers announced at the evening meeting. "They're sending military ships to defend us." "Will that be enough?" asked one of the Calarian elders. "The military will help, but our real defense is what we're building here. The Devourers target agricultural worlds because they need the biological matter. If we can produce food faster than they can consume it, we can outlast them." Beth added, "Plus, we're developing rapid soil restoration techniques. Even if they do manage to strip some of our farmland, we'll be able to restore it and start growing again within days instead of decades." Elder Moss looked around the meeting hall at the faces of beings from a dozen different worlds, all working together toward the same goal. Humans, Verdanians, Calarians, Zalthari, and others he was still learning to identify. 3 days later, the observation post reported a dark cloud approaching Verdania from deep space. The Devourers had arrived. The alarm bells rang across Verdania at dawn, their sound carrying across every valley and hilltop. Elder Moss stood in the central command center that the humans had built, watching displays that showed the approaching swarm. Dark clouds of creatures filled the space around their planet like a living storm. "Estimated contact in 6 hours," reported Beth from her monitoring station. "The swarm is larger than any we've seen before. Probably accumulated mass from all the worlds they've consumed." Sam Rivers stood calm in the center of the chaos, coordinating responses. "All harvesting teams, begin emergency crop collection. Priority alpha crops to underground storage immediately. Everyone else, prepare defensive positions." Elder Moss felt his heart beating fast with fear. Through the observation windows, he could see the refugee camps where 50,000 beings waited nervously. Children from a dozen species played together while their parents prepared for battle. Sam, are you certain this will work? Moss asked quietly. Nothing is certain, Sam replied. But we've prepared for every scenario we could imagine. Dave rushed into the command center carrying a communication device. The Galactic Council fleet has arrived. Admiral Krex wants to coordinate defensive strategy. The view screen activated, showing a stern-faced Altarian military officer. Human settlement, this is Admiral Krex. We have 12 warships in position. What are your defensive requirements? Sam Rivers looked at the Admiral with respect but firmness. Admiral, we appreciate your support, but our primary defense isn't military. We need you to protect our orbital facilities and buy us time to implement our agricultural strategy. Agricultural strategy? These creatures have destroyed entire worlds. You plan to defeat them with farming. Not defeat them, Admiral. Outlast them. Beth pulled up tactical displays showing their planet-wide farming operation. The Devourers need to consume biological matter to survive and reproduce. But we've calculated that Verdania can now produce food faster than they can eat it. Admiral Krex looked confused. Explain. Sam Rivers pointed to different sections of the display. We have rotating crop cycles operating continuously. When they strip one field, we already have 3 more ready for harvest. Plus, our underground storage contains enough preserved food to sustain everyone for months. And if they consume everything anyway, then we use our rapid restoration techniques to regrow from stored seeds. We can have new crops growing within days of soil recovery. The Admiral studied their plans with growing amazement. This level of agricultural production should be impossible. How did you achieve such yields? Elder Moss stepped forward. By learning that survival requires more than just meeting today's needs. These humans taught us to always prepare for tomorrow's challenges. On the displays, they could see the first wave of Devourers entering the planet's atmosphere. The creatures looked like dark insects the size of small birds, but there were billions of them. They moved together like a single organism, flowing across the sky in patterns that blocked out the sun. Beginning Phase 1, Sam Rivers announced. All harvesting teams, collect everything that's ready. Don't worry about the fields they hit. Focus on maximizing what we save. Elder Moss watched through the windows as mixed teams of humans, Verdanians, and refugees worked with incredible efficiency. Automated harvesting machines moved through the fields while crews loaded crops into underground storage facilities. Everyone moved according to plans they had practiced for months. The first Devourers landed in the northern valleys. Within minutes, green fields turned gray as the creatures consumed everything in sight. But instead of panic, the agricultural teams simply moved to other prepared areas and continued their work. Northern sectors reporting complete consumption, Beth announced. Estimated time for soil stripping, 18 hours. Phase 2, Sam Rivers ordered. Begin rapid succession planting in the southern valleys. Use the emergency growth stimulants. Elder Moss had never seen anything like what happened next. Human agricultural techniques that had seemed impossibly fast before now operated at incredible speed. Seeds were planted, watered, and treated with growth compounds that could produce harvestable crops in days instead of weeks. How is this possible? Admiral Krex asked, still watching from his ship. Dave grinned as he coordinated the planting teams. Earth taught us that sometimes you need to grow food faster than nature intended. These techniques were developed for post-disaster recovery. The battle continued for 3 days. The Devourers consumed field after field, stripping the soil down to bare rock. But each time they finished with one area, the agricultural teams had already moved their operations to new locations. The underground storage facilities kept everyone fed, while surface production continued at a pace that matched the creature's consumption. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. The Devourer swarm began to slow down. Their movements became less coordinated. Instead of the organized waves that had destroyed other worlds, they spread out randomly across the planet's surface. What's happening to them? Elder Moss asked. Beth checked her monitoring equipment. I think they're getting full. They've consumed more biological matter here than on any previous world, but we keep producing more. Their reproduction cycle is being disrupted. Sam Rivers studied the creature behavior patterns. They're adapted to strip a planet clean and move on quickly. But we're not following the normal pattern. We're providing continuous food instead of a finite supply. So they don't know when to stop eating. Exactly. And overeating is disrupting their life cycle. By the 6th day, the Devourer swarm was clearly struggling. Many creatures moved slowly or not at all. Their coordination had broken down completely. Instead of a unified organism, they behaved like confused individual insects. Admiral Krex, now would be an excellent time for your military intervention, Sam Rivers suggested. The Galactic Council ships moved in to eliminate the weakened creatures, while agricultural teams began a restoration process that would return Verdania to full production within weeks. 2 years after the Devourer swarm was defeated, Elder Moss walked through fields that stretched beyond the horizon. Where once there had been modest Verdanian farms and rocky hills, now there was the most productive agricultural region in the known galaxy. The transformation still amazed him every day. Beings from dozens of species worked together in the fields. Former refugees had become permanent residents, bringing their families to join the growing community. Children who had fled dying worlds now played between crop rows, learning farming techniques from multiple traditions. The latest reports are remarkable. Sam Rivers said, joining Moss at the edge of a vast grain field. Verdania is now producing enough food to supply 17 solar systems. We're shipping surplus to rebuild the destroyed agricultural worlds. Elder Moss picked a stalk of grain and examined the heavy seeds. I never imagined such abundance was possible. When you humans first arrived, I thought you were simply greedy for more land. I understand why it seemed that way. But Earth taught us that abundance shared is abundance multiplied. They walked toward the central hub where the restoration ships were loading supplies. These vessels carried seeds, soil restoration equipment, and teams of agricultural specialists to worlds that the Devourers had stripped bare. The galaxy-wide recovery effort was led from Verdania. Using techniques developed during the crisis, a young Calarian approached them carrying a communication device. Sam Rivers, we have a message from his Althari reconstruction team. They've successfully restored crop production on their homeworld. The first harvest will be ready next month. Sam smiled. That makes 8 worlds successfully restored so far. Elder Moss felt proud hearing the news, but also curious about something that had been puzzling him. Sam, I want to understand something about human thinking. When the crisis began, your people worked harder than anyone thought possible. Now that the crisis is over, you're working just as hard to help others. Why? Sam Rivers stopped walking and looked across the fields where hundreds of beings were tending crops. Elder Moss, do you remember what you told me when we first arrived? You said this rocky land should grow enough food for 12 to 15 individuals. Yes, that was the traditional estimate for that area. We're currently using that same area to help feed about 50,000 people. Elder Moss calculated the numbers in his head. That's more than 3,000 times the expected yield. The difference isn't just better techniques or harder work. The difference is perspective. We don't grow food for the people we can see today. We grow food for all the people who might need it tomorrow. As they continued walking, they passed groups of young beings from various species learning advanced agricultural methods. These students would eventually return to their home systems, carrying knowledge that could transform farming throughout the galaxy that a human woman named Lisa approached with a data tablet. Sam, the Galactic Council has approved funding for the Rapid Response Agricultural Program. They want us to establish emergency farming capabilities on 50 strategic worlds. Excellent. How many teams will we need? About 200 mixed species agricultural specialists, plus equipment for rapid soil restoration and crisis-level food production. Elder Moss listened to them planning the expansion of their methods across the galaxy. You're creating a network of worlds that can respond to future disasters. Exactly, Sam replied. The Devourers might return someday, or some other crisis might threaten food supplies. This time, we'll be ready. That evening, Elder Moss attended the weekly community meeting. Representatives from all the species living on Verdania gathered to coordinate their activities. The meeting was held in the Great Hall that had been expanded to accommodate beings of many different sizes and environmental needs. Admiral Krex, who had remained on Verdania to help with reconstruction efforts, stood to give his report. The Galactic Council has officially recognized the Verdanian model as the new standard for agricultural planning. Worlds throughout the galaxy are requesting assistance to implement similar systems. An elderly Zalthari farmer raised her hand. What exactly is the Verdanian model? It's the principle that every agricultural world should produce not just enough food for its own population, but enough to help others during emergencies. No world should ever face hunger alone. But that requires constant work and expansion, noted a Calarian engineer. Most species prefer stable, predictable farming methods. Stability is important, Elder Moss said, standing to address the group. But we learned that true stability comes from being prepared for instability. Our old methods were stable until they weren't. The meeting continued with reports from various restoration projects. Every week brought news of another world returning to productive agriculture, another population saved from starvation, another system joining the network of mutual support. Later, as the meeting ended and beings returned to their homes, Elder Moss walked with Sam Rivers toward the human settlement. The night sky was filled with stars, many of them now connected to Verdania through bonds of cooperation and shared knowledge. Sam, I have one more question, Moss said. On Earth, you're a harsh planet. Did humans ever achieve the kind of abundance we have here? Sam Rivers was quiet for a moment. No, we never did. Earth was always difficult, always requiring struggle just to survive. We dreamed of abundance, but we never actually experienced it. So you created here what you could never have at home. We created here what we always wished we could share with others. The hunger that drives humans isn't really hunger for food. It's hunger for a world where no one has to be hungry. Elder Moss looked up at the stars, thinking about all the worlds where beings were working to build that kind of future. Your blades that never rest have become tools that feed the galaxy. And they'll keep working as long as there's anyone, anywhere, who needs what we can grow.